And here we are once again for another episode of Motivation and Money with me, Mark Terrell, and my co-host Fanny Snaith. How are you
Good
today, Fanny?
afternoon. I'm very good, thank you very much. The
Good.
more I read the topic that you suggested for this week,
Yeah,
the more excited I get about it. It's
I
such
know
a good topic.
it is a good topic, and it's surprising how we don't pay enough attention to it actually, because we have certain controls over our environment, and if we can actually embrace that, then we can shape our environment and hopefully get better results and more success in our future, and all those sort of things that we've been gassing on about over the weeks. So
Gassing,
I've
gassing.
gassing on about, yeah. Sorry, it's not exactly PC, is it? Anyway, I thought before we start, I'm just going to share my iPad just to sort of frame what we're talking about. Really, it's something that I've got prepared, so I might as well do that.
Sure.
So this is what we're talking about. Uh, can we you can shape your environment, and essentially we want to avoid being a passive victim. So in other words, a victim of our environment. So if you're thinking like this, so everything is happening to you, so everything's coming towards you as opposed to having any control over it, then you're probably starting to feel a bit overwhelmed. But if you change the mindset and think about your environment and being able to change it and shape it, then you can turn the tables and think about how you have influence on all these things, and then hopefully get a better result, which is more in line with what we want to, the direction that we want to go. So I just thought that'd be worth sort of sharing something. It's a very simple sort of concept, but essentially that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, and even today I've had a fantastic, it's just struck me actually, I've had a fantastic example of this. Shall I tell you what it is?
Go for it.
So I've just recently trained with Quest Cognitive Hypnotherapy as a cognitive hypnotherapist. And then the next bit that we do is we do the master practitioner, which is entitled Project You. So I've been on a course this weekend and last week, the weekend just gone, thinking about what I need to focus on in my life, i.e., to get rid of the BS that helps me to then um, move forward into becoming. I don't like the being the best version of me, but it's a good way to describe it, to become become the person that I
Yes.
want to become, which means that I need to throw things back onto me, a bit like your little diagram that you just showed there, and say, what is it about what's going on around me that I am blaming, whether consciously or subconsciously, that stops me moving forward? Either things that I tolerate, either things that I blame, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So last night I sat down and wrote out my intentions for today, which included I'm only going to drink water today. I'm having a water day.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to, because I'm wanting to lose a bit of weight, as you know. My fast is going to be for a minimum of 17 hours. So that was nothing before 10:30. And there are no bread products, biscuits, any sort of orangey, browny, beigey carbs going into my body today.
Yep.
To remain outside. So it came to 10:30 and I had 15 minutes in between a phone call. And I went out to the kitchen and first of all, I'm allowed to eat now, right? I didn't actually ask myself, does my body really want food? So that was the first thing. And then I got into the kitchen and I suddenly went, all that's available to me are all the things that I'm not supposed to eat,
Oh no.
without me having to put serious thought into it, because I hadn't planned properly,
Yeah.
right? And I hadn't left myself enough time to cook something that is not. So it would have been so easy
Mm.
to have a nice milky coffee with a couple of bits of toast.
Yeah.
And hence why I am in here. So I have to change my environment in order to be able to fulfill the intention that I've set myself today.
Well, the funny thing is that I've written down food here as well, because it's it's an important part of living, isn't it? And after sharing that last week that I just finished reading Ultra Processed People, and how that has influenced my what I'm going to eat in the future. But what we eat, as you just alluded to there, is influenced by what we buy and what we have available to us. So the
Yep.
first thing we've got to think about is the environment with regards to having available the things that we've said that we're going to eat. And if the other things are in easy reach and the others aren't, or the good things that we want to eat aren't, then what are we going to do? We might fail and then end up eating the things we don't
Yeah.
want to eat. So luckily in our household, I am solely responsible, it seems like, to buy food. So I take charge of that, which is fine because I quite enjoy it.
Well, the first thing that I saw when I go out to the kitchen today is a 3/4 of a Betty Crocker's Devil's Chocolate Cake, because it was my daughter's birthday yesterday. So I'm not in charge of that. So that my head has got to be in charge. I've got to be in charge of that in my head. But again, it's so interesting, isn't it? In the fact that if we're talking about in business and our environment, I know many people now who from my course who are setting up as therapists, and what happens is they're setting up their Instagram pages, they're setting up their web pages, etc., and then all the others are sharing them and liking them and all that kind of stuff. But what that means is that their attention is diverted into what other people are doing. And then you sign up to get emails from things. And I have definitely been allowed myself to be victim of this, in that I open my inbox and I've got all these people dumping emails into my inbox telling me what I should do, what I should read, what I should listen to, how I should be, how I should do this. And that forms part of my environment. And if that's forming part of my environment and I'm looking at it, it's going to detract from what I'm supposed to be doing. It's going to influence what and how I say what I want to say. It's possibly going to affect my confidence, because obviously I'm going to be, there's comparisonitis that comes in. So it's a very, very valid part of my environment. So I would say anybody who's starting out in business or as a business owner who's struggling, just for a while, unsubscribe to everything, clear that and get rid of it.
Indeed,
clear it. Just get rid of it.
But I was interested in what you said there about, people setting up as therapists. And why do they set up as therapists? In most cases, I think it's to solve a problem that they had themselves. Would you agree with that? Yeah. More than often than that. So pretty much all the coaches and therapists I've come across, that's certainly the situation.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, what they are actually putting their hands up and saying that we could have changed the environment that would have better results, and I wouldn't have ended up making the mistakes or had the situation that happened to me if I knew how to change the environment. Because that was what we're doing as a coach, helping our clients to change the environment around them or see the environment in a different way. Yeah.
Yes, although I would also then I have to keep bringing back into my head my favourite Maxwell Maltz quote, which is, "You're never going to outperform your own self-image." So your identity, which is something that can be learned as childhood, and your blueprint, etc., your beliefs, your behaviors, which then affect your capabilities, which then affect your environment as well from a top down, are also very important to consider.
That quote, that was that quote from Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yes, that one, Psycho-Cybernetics. Yes. And this is it. And it comes down to, again, the old be, do, have model, that, I have to change my environment. I have to go and make a load of money. I have to do all this really hard work, go to the gym, eat better things, whatever strand it's in order to be this person. And then I think that, yes, okay, you change your environment, i.e. you buy the gym shoes, or let's do the money thing. You set up a budget, you log on to Money Dashboard, you cancel a few subscriptions, you decide you're going to pay off your credit card, etc. And you have all full good intentions until somebody pops a little bubble related to your identity through your beliefs and whatever, and then your environment changes again and you go out and you blow it on a holiday or something. All the good stuff that you've done goes backwards. So I don't think it is just environment, but I do think it's really important
my understanding is it's not, I'm not just talking about physical environment, things around us that we can see and feel and touch and all that sort of stuff. It's really about how we have, it's almost the internal environment as well, like you've just alluded to, that how we perceive ourselves, how everything is connected. And if we change, like you say, our environment around us, but don't change the way we are, the way we think, then we can't expect much to change, can we? So absolutely, 100% what
No,
you just said.
I think it's a partnering, and we were talking about good old Maslow, and I put in the post that I when I posted earlier about the meeting, or
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, whenever it was, about mentioning the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, mentioning Gregory Bateson's model, the neurological levels, and Robert Dilts, and all that kind of stuff. And I think all that's really important because they specifically put the environment part of it at the bottom of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to talk about the Blackfoot tribe, weren't we? That kind of culture and how that was determined. And I think it's important because so when we take the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which, as you pointed out before we went on air, that it was never meant to be a triangle, it just ended up being a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Maslow went and spent a whole load of time with the was it the Blackfoot community, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And he had environment at the bottom. He did have the order, right? But it just wasn't the pyramid. But environment at the bottom, sort of being safe and all that kind of stuff, and having the identity or the self-actualization part of it at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this other perspective, it was turned on its head, and actually was thinking about the person, the identity, the individual was born into a community that was filled with unconditional love. And accepted the person exactly as they were, as they arrived, and then nurtured them and helped them to grow in order to be the person that they were supposed to be.
Mm.
Whereas I think in our culture, we're born into busy parents, not always with unconditional love. In fact, seems to be one of the biggest, I'm not good enough is one of the biggest plagues of society today, which I think comes from that early nurture, where we are told that we're bad or we're not, haven't been good enough, or that makes make me feel, or whatever, where we've taken that on board and learned to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that forms part of our environment, and then that's where we tend to get stuck.
Yeah, for sure. But I think on that purpose thing, I think, and my work with motivation, purpose is so important a driver. And I see it even in the sort of 20 to 30-year-olds. Now, I'm pretty sure when I was in that age group, or I wasn't thinking about my purpose in life. I'm sure there was other things that are driving me other than that. But now what you see is that generation is all about purpose. They want to do something that they feel is worthwhile. And so when you think about shaping our environment or helping others to shape their environment, we've got to create that in a work environment to allow that to happen. And that sometimes is missed completely or not handled very well, because what we're talking about here is communicating a message, a values message, particularly in the workplace. If people go to work for a purpose, then they need to feel that they are making a difference and that what they're doing is worthwhile. And so that needs feedback, and that often is not given in the right way or not at all. And so that's an environment with regards to our work environment that is important on a motivational basis, which allows us to perform better if those things are being fulfilled.
I agree.
And sometimes it's just a way of thinking about things can make a big difference.
Definitely. And for those people who are who suffer from what they call imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
which I think we can classify as people who are successful. They do know what they're doing. They're not learners, and yet they feel very insecure in their roles. That's coming from an identity level, whereby if you're poked in a way that actually affects, there's lots of people talk about imposter syndrome and they're just going, oh, just push through it. One of my dear friends is a lady called Tara Halliday, whose second book is actually coming out in September. And she's an imposter syndrome expert. This is her second book coming out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a case of pushing through. It's actually looking at that very, very, very deep identity level, going back to the conditional and unconditional love, because the thing is, you can put somebody in a work environment where everything they're doing is making a difference, but if it's not landing in the same way, or if they're not being able to receive it because of dents to their identity, it's still not going to completely hit home.
Well, the thing is with it is it's a personal thing. Just because it makes I feel I'm making a difference doesn't necessarily mean that the person who's doing exactly the same job as me is feeling the same way. And that's it's a feeling
So
at the end of the day.
yeah, but going back then to it is that it's important for us, when your fantastic diagram at the beginning, it's important for us to realize and take on board that if we're not feeling fulfilled and feeling that our environment isn't serving us in any kind of way, it's our responsibility to do something about it and not somebody else's.
Indeed. So it's first of all recognise that we have control over it, and then taking the responsibility that I can change things if I choose to, and it's just a matter of finding a way to change the environment so it suits me and to allow that the success or whatever it is we're moving towards to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have many people calling me, actually so many more of recent, going, I'm not actually calling for myself, I'm calling for a relative or whatever. They're in a terrible mess. They've been years and years this has been going on, and we keep on bailing them out, and they've been in jobs that they hate, and now they're finally doing this, but then we keep on having to bail them out and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's harsh words, but it's like you are helping to enable them to stay in the environment that they're in.
Yes.
By actually helping them all, you're not actually helping them, you're actually enabling them to stay where they are. Yes, it's good to help somebody out when they're in trouble, but the alarm bells start to ring when it's over and over again, and then you have a further conversation with those people, and it's like, well, everybody else is to blame, it's never been their fault, it's all, if they'd had other opportunities of had the opportunities of such and such, things would have been so much better, etc. So again, we have to be very mindful of the people's environments that we are enabling to continue in a negative way.
But also, whoever we reach out to, they have their sort of limiting beliefs or whatever you want to say as well. So, exactly. We can only go to the reaches of their abilities or their beliefs, can't we? So that's the thing, that we've got to keep reaching out to maybe different people and allowing things to happen to us, because like you say, we can only go as far as our beliefs, our own beliefs, and those that are around us allow to happen. And there's also those people that will prevent us from getting to where we want to go because they feel threatened by it. That's another thing that we've got to take.
They'll try.
They can try.
It depends on your internal locus of control, right? If you're going to allow other people from outside to affect what you're going to do, then yes, those people will hold you back. But then again, you look at people, I mean, I don't know, the obvious one to think about, people like Oprah Winfrey and Tony Robbins, who tell their story of coming from a terrible childhood and the background, and they've used that to use that awful environment that they were in to catapult them to these amazing levels of success.
Yeah.
So
they've
again,
driven away from something. They've used their motivation to drive themselves away from something, and that keeps them going. Yeah.
So are we then saying, I have a question for you. So are we then saying then, we know that we have towards and away from motivation, carrot and stick. If we were looking at our environment as the motivator, or looking at our environment as the base pot of where we sit in. So you can have somebody like, I can't get my words out today. Have somebody like Tony Robbins and Oprah Winfrey who have a horrible place to be, and they go, I'm not staying here, I'm going somewhere else. And then you can have somebody who's in a really great environment, who's encouraged in all the right way, going, well, I'm only going upwards.
Yeah.
But then you can have other people that will just sit. I just sit there.
Yeah.
I'm here. Whether it's good or whether it's not good, I'm just staying here. So whatever happens, we have to consider our environment.
That's our choice, isn't it? That's our choice of whether we're happy where we are. If we're happy with the art, sometimes you get to a place where I'm happy where I am, ticking along. That's good enough for me. And sometimes we do that, don't we, in our life? But it's not all about change. I think one of the things I learned from the creator of Motivational Maps, actually James Sale, he did a really great talk once, and he said that if you're motivated by growth, then the thing you fear most is things to stay the same. And the one thing you've got to be aware of is that sometimes staying the same is okay. There's not, you don't have to keep changing. It's a matter of being aware of this. So if you keep driving for change, then you can sometimes not even give yourself time to stop and smell the roses. So change is good if we know where we're going, but just remember that sometimes we just need to appreciate where we already got to.
Yeah, and that goes down to plan, do, review, doesn't it? Plan, do, review, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to somebody at the weekend, and this project due, and they were thinking about self-mastery and how much you do what you'll say you're going to do and all that kind of thing. And it seemed reasonably obvious that they were quite tough on themselves, that if they set themselves up to do something and they didn't do it, and they were getting quite confused because it was like, well, okay, so I'm going to wake up in the morning and at 6 o'clock, and I'm gonna set my environment up. I'm gonna put my gym clothes on, my go out walking clothes ready, so I've got no excuse. I just put them on and go. We have Mel Robbins talking about put the phone in the bathroom, have the alarm clock on the other side of the room, which is all about setting up your environment, right?
Yeah.
So he was saying, so I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock, I'll do some meditation, then I'll do some stretching, then I'm going to go on my walk, then I'm going to do some reading, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. And I was going, whoa, I said, whoa, slow it down. Because he was talking about just adding things all the time, just adding things to his, sort of, and I was going, what kind of environment is that to live in? It's like, you're not going to have time to do anything else. Wouldn't maybe what it would be a good idea is to look at those segments and go, well, what does meditation give you? Okay, so that's looking at mind, body, spirit, or just, mind. And then movement is your body, reading is your learning, outside is your exercise. So let's say we take those 4 areas. It's not about making each one of these bigger, it's about making them better quality.
Right.
Isn't it? So it's not, that's the thing. So how do you set yourself up to do that?
Well, you've got to give yourself time to let things bed in. So what you've just described there, if all those things are all new things that you introduce all at the same time, then the likelihood that you're going to stick to all of them is very unlikely, isn't it? So what you've got to do is introduce things so that they become a habit and you get used to it as part of your day-to-day. And if you suddenly change 6 things in one go, I mean, I can't see that that's sort of doable. It's just too much for your brain and what your body to cope with.
Things, they can be itty bitty things, can't they? Read 8 lines of a book, meditate for 15 seconds, go outside for 25 paces. You could make them tiny things and build on them. But I completely agree. I'm being pedantic, really.
Yeah, I knew you were. But we talked before we, I was going to say, went on air, before we started streaming, about character strengths and the importance of understanding what our strengths are and realizing that they may be the things that we need to sort of address. So I'm going to share, when I did this, the character assessment strengths thing, we'll share the link in the comments if you're interested in doing it. It's a free thing you can do, and they will then offer you to upgrade to buy something, but essentially the basic test is free. And I found out from mine is that my number one strength was forgiveness, which is, as character strengths goes, it's quite good, and there's no good or bad, but what I realised was that if you overuse it, and that was the telling, it says what do you become if you overuse forgiveness? You become permissive and a doormat. In other words, you forgive everything and you don't question anything, and that's a key learning. Was a key learning for me, realising that if you keep accepting behaviours and not questioning them and forgiving them, then you never allow anything to change, because you're not challenging and saying, well, this is not right. That's got to change scenario. So, and you've got your top character strength, I'm sure, which you probably had time to reflect on.
Shall I tell you what it was?
Go on.
It's my top 5, which is what they ask you to look at. Number 1, honesty. Number 2, love of learning. Number 3 is gratitude. Number 4 is perspective. And number 5 is leadership.
Oh, interesting. So we shared 2 of our top 5. Perspective and level of learning were in my top 5.
Right. Okay. But the interesting part of it is when I looked at my bottom 5, my lesser, so they're not talking, they're talking the lowest ones, but so prudence, spirituality, which I was a bit annoyed about actually, but hey ho, that's right. Zest.
Right.
And I think that is quite apt at the moment because of the stuff, the work that I'm doing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Self-regulation.
Right.
Which is great, right? When you want to try and lose a bit of weight and do a bit more exercise, and perseverance. So
Wow.
my thoughts are if I could just go and change my environment, i.e., go and clear the cupboards of all the biscuits and the bread and all those things that I don't want. I want to be my body to be free from. But without self-regulation, that's not going to hold because I'll find myself wandering down to the new Lidl that's opened round the corner and buying myself some biscuits, won't I? If I don't have that self-regulation. Yeah. So I'm thinking that what I need to do is I need to bring in my honesty and honesty to self, my perspective and my self-leadership in order to improve my self-regulation so that it will be in balance with that aforesaid mentioned prepared environment. So it all works hand in hand.
Very clever. I like that. Yeah. I've got perseverance and self-regulation in my bottom 5 as well, actually. Funnily enough.
What does that say about us, Mark?
I don't know. God. We
That's
should go away
good.
and think about that.
I don't think we better go out for a drink with each other, eh?
No.
Although that happened while I've managed to ditch now.
Yeah, well, I've never been a big drinker myself anyway. I mean, I can take it or leave it, to be honest, and that's one of the things that has never been a problem for me. But we all have our vices that mine is sweet things for sure.
So let's get back to thinking for a second about helping other people. So if anybody is to listen to this and you're sitting in a job that you really don't feel comfortable in, I'm not going to say you absolutely hate, because I think there's probably parts of it that you might like. But if you're sitting there and you're feeling uncomfortable about where you are in life, you're not feeling very satisfied with where you are in life, take a look around. First and foremost, take a look around at the environment that you're in. Because would it be right in saying that it would be very difficult to be in flow? We talked about that last week. To be in flow, to be in alignment, to be happy, if your environment... no, actually, that's quite interesting. If your environment doesn't suit you, and it's suddenly come to me that there are plenty of people in war-torn countries like Syria and all that who have actually got a lot of things in alignment, and yet their environment. But it is a good place to start, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but it's not just about your physical environment, as we've already talked about. I think it's the way you think about it and how you perceive your environment and things that are going on around you. So I had obviously lots of work I've done with motivation, and one of the ones that always reminds me of this more than anything is that I was talking to a young solicitor, a conveyancing solicitor, and she didn't feel that she made a difference. And it wasn't until she just checked in with the feedback that she would get over the years that actually she realised that she made things easier and pleasure to work with, blah, blah, blah. And she'd sort of forgotten to sort of check in with that. And that just changed the perspective of her job straight away. I mean, it did lead to her make some changes and realising that actually the type of business she was working for was probably not ideal for her. So she just seeked out a smaller practice. So, so we have a certain amount of control over this, but if we can't change something, then sometimes it's just a matter of thinking about things and in a different way. That what good am I doing actually, and connecting to that.
And making a difference doesn't have to be Mother Teresa level or Greta Thunberg level. Making a difference is just one person at a time.
Exactly, and that I mean, vast majority of people don't do those massive, life-changing, earth-changing things. It's about connecting to the purpose you have. About what do I do? What value do I see in what I do? how many people do I impact and allow things to happen? And that's why, sometimes when people volunteer, they suddenly realize that it's about helping
Mm.
people more than anything. And when you connect
Yeah.
to and actually see the difference you make, that makes all the difference. It's sometimes people are so disconnected and don't really see the difference they make because it's so far down the line that
Yeah.
that's the problem, and that's why that getting out and doing some good in the community is so valuable.
Yeah. Or we just don't see it. There's stuff in our, how observant are we of our environment? How observant are we of, how mindful are we of our thoughts, etc., which is
Yeah,
all important too.
mindful's a good way to sort of wrap things up here because we've unfortunately done our 30 minutes already,
Yeah.
and it's a big topic and one that's really important, I think. And we take charge and realize that we do have some control over our environment, and not just the physical environment, just the things that we have around us that we're connected to, and all those sort of things that make us
Yeah.
feel good. Then that can make a massive difference to our potential in life.
Yes. I just suddenly realised I should have probably spoken more about money on that, but it's
Well, you sort of alluded to money, and we've all got
a little
our
bit, yeah.
yeah, and I think if you want to talk more about money and how that might affect you, you know where to go. Fanny's always available, and there will be, if you want to know and how to contact Fanny, then at the end of the show you'll see her website. So check it out and do the money quiz. Do the money quiz if that's
Yeah.
as well. So there we
Right.
are. So time's up. What do we need to do before we go our separate ways then, Fanny? Anything you want to finish off with?
I don't think so. I think we're all right. We've done a few shout outs. We'll put the link to the the skills, whatever it's called, the
VIR,
VIO
character
character
strengths.
strengths.
Yep.
We'll put a link to Tara Halliday in there, and I don't think Maslow's
Good
going to
stuff.
care.
No, I think he's long gone. But it just shows that the work he did is still relevant. But maybe he's adapting for our current environment. Maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, no time to talk about that now. So thanks again, Fanny. Really enjoyed it today. And for you, if you catch this on replay, feel free to leave comments. Unfortunately, if you are live and been watching and you've left some comments, I don't see them. So we will follow up with those comments. But please leave your comments. We really appreciate any sort of interaction. But until next time, we will bid farewell, and we will see you next time for the next Motivation and Money show in the not too distant future.